Greetings, my friends. Evangelist Joey Bellmore here once again. And in this video, I want to talk about the recently created Saudi-led anti-terror alliance, if you will. And we're going to look at a lot of recent reports on this aspect of what's going on over there in the Middle East as things continue to progress in Syria, foreshadowing the Isaiah 17 prophecy on the destruction of Damascus, as I've often alluded to in previous videos. But recently, the Islamic Anti-Terror Coalition has been established, and it was created by Saudi Arabia and will coordinate activities apparently in Syria and Iraq with the authorities of these countries. And this is a statement that was released by Saudi Arabia's defense minister on Tuesday. And it goes on to mention here that Saudi Arabia announced the establishment of a military alliance between 34 predominantly Muslim states to fight terrorism. The Joint Operations Command Center will be based in the Saudi capital of Riyadh. It goes on to mention, as we read the piece here, that interference by the coalition in the situation in Syria and Iraq will be conducted in coordination with the authorities of these countries and international forces, according to Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud and his remarks. It says he added that the coalition's anti-terrorism activities would be coordinated at an international basis. The Islamic coalition, which includes Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Malaysia, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Turkey, among other nations, was created to counteract terrorism, which became a threat to the interests of the Islamic nation, according to a statement by Riyadh. So you got 34 predominantly Muslim states here forming this anti-terrorism alliance, and this leads me into the next piece, in which the Saudi Arabian foreign minister came out and said the Islamic Anti-Terror Coalition is expecting an increase in the number of member states. And it goes on to say here that the recently established Islamic Coalition Against Terrorism expects more countries to join. Saudi Arabian Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir said on Tuesday. So we're going to see that more nations are joining this thing here, and it reinstates the fact that this is a 34-member Islamic military alliance, and it says the Islamic coalition includes Egypt, Jordan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkey, among other nations. 10 Islamic countries outside the military alliance, including Indonesia, are said to have expressed support of the alliance. So we're going to see other nations join into this thing here, and definitely a major sign here of these end times, as we've already got a lot of the major world powers involved in these conflicts, and now we're seeing a massive Middle Eastern Islamic alliance joining the fray here. And I'll just say that I'm very skeptical of this whole thing here, and it seems to be major development that relates to the end-time prophetic scriptures in the Word of God. And this is a significant development here of this alliance, and we'll move on here to the next piece, which talks about how Saudi Arabia can't just declare war on the terror they themselves created. And when you research it, you're going to find that Saudi Arabia has quite the track record. And I'll leave it at that. But this piece goes on to say, commenting on Saudi Arabia's announcement that they would be forming a 34-nation Islamic anti-terrorism coalition, prominent Pakistani columnist and political analyst Wahat Masood warned that Riyadh might have a hard time fighting against a phenomenon which they themselves have done so much to support over the past 30 years. So, and that's why I'm skeptical over this whole thing. You know, what's to say that they form this Islamic military alliance, they get the unity among all the nations, and then this Islamic coalition begins to not want to play ball, you know, with the Western-led coalition. I mean, you could just see this being set up here, and definitely a major sign of the times as we see this 30-plus nation Islamic military alliance coming and being formed here. Meanwhile, the role of the Saudi-led military alliance is been put to question in this report, as apparently some members have rejected participation. It mentions here that the international community has welcomed Saudi Arabia's initiative to create a coalition against terrorism. However, its military and ideological role has been met with confusion even among members, some of whom didn't know they were included. On Tuesday, Saudi Arabia announced the creation of an Islamic Military Alliance with a mission to fight terrorism. Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said the coalition of 34 Muslim states would fight the scourge in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Egypt, and Afghanistan. The coalition members are to share intelligence, train, and equip, and possibly even provide forces to fight against militants such as Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, said Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir. So we see here that some of the members didn't even know they were included, and have come straight out and rejected participation for now, at least for the time being. Another piece here talking about how the Saudi anti-Daesh coalition has sparked widespread confusion even among the members, as the headline reads. And it says here that with the Saudi-led anti-Daesh coalition officially off the ground, several of the 34 member states have some important questions, including, what is this? What role do I play? And is it too late to opt out? And so we see here that on Tuesday, Saudi Arabia announced this creation of this Islamic military coalition against terrorism, as I alluded to. And it mentions how it includes 34 nations from across the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, and will be coordinated from a command center in Riyadh. So many of the members were questioning, what is this? Obviously, there was no disclosure. There was no advanced knowledge by some of these nations who were mentioned as members. But as it stands, they're calling it a 34-nation coalition, and I presume other nations will join, other Muslim states. And that leads me to this next piece here, originally from the World Socialist website, but I've got it pulled up here on globalresearch.ca, and it talks about Saudi Arabia and the whole war on terror. And it mentions how U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter praised the Saudi monarchy for proclaiming a new Islamic alliance against terrorism. And it goes on to mention here that one of the fundamental questions that should be asked is, what does the Saudi regime mean by terrorism? Clearly, it is not referring to the various Al-Qaeda-linked groups fighting in Syria, all of which get substantial funding, as well as large numbers of fighters and their religious ideological inspiration from the Wahhabist Saudi kingdom. And it goes on to talk a little bit more about Saudi Arabia and their role and their history, and how this is a very shifty little alliance being formed here, taking a page out of the United States and the West and NATO, creating a military alliance in the name of humanitarian efforts to fight terrorism. So we'll see what happens out of all this, but I think this is a pretty significant development that we're going to have to continue to keep our eye on, that will become more and more relevant in these end times in which we live, as things begin to align with biblical prophecy day by day here. And here's a piece talking about how the phone call from the Saudis was enough to drag Lebanon into the anti-Islamic State Islamic Alliance. And so we're seeing another nation join here, as the Lebanese people received on Tuesday the news about the Republic of Lebanon joining the Islamic Military Alliance. The announcement was made by Saudi Arabia the midnight before and is aimed at fighting terrorism. So again, we see that Lebanon is now joining this coalition, which I believe is going to play a large role in world events as we move forward from here on out, and we'll see where it all goes. But one thing's for sure, it's just another sign of the times, my friends. So until next time, I'm going to close with that, This is Evangelist Joey Bellmore signing off. I hope you all have a blessed day. Greetings, my friends. Evangelist Joey Bellmore here once again. And in this video, I want to talk about the recently created Saudi-led anti-terror alliance, if you will. And we're going to look at a lot of recent reports on this aspect of what's going on over interference by the coalition in the situation in Syria and Iraq will be conducted in coordination with the authorities of these countries and international forces, according to Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud and his remarks. It says he added that the coalition's anti-terrorism activities would be coordinated. It was created by Saudi Arabia and will coordinate activities apparently in Syria and Iraq with the authorities of these countries. And this is a statement that was released by Saudi Arabia's defense minister on Tuesday. And it goes on to mention here that they're in the Middle East as things continue to progress in Syria, foreshadowing the Isaiah 17 prophecy on the destruction of Damascus, as I've often alluded to in previous videos. But recently, the Islamic Anti-Terror Coalition has been established, and Saudi Arabia announced the establishment of a military alliance between 34 predominantly Muslim states to fight terrorism. The Joint Operations Command Center will be based in the Saudi capital of Riyadh. It goes on to mention, as we read the piece here,